Folks, I want you to welcome back to the program from the campaign trail. We've got Congressman French Hill is with us. Congressman, thanks for coming on this morning.
Paul, good to hear your voice. Glad to be back on. Glad you're feeling better.
Yes, sir, I am. I'm sorry about having to postpone our interview from yesterday, but I am doing better. I'm ready to really, see the Republicans win, see the Republicans keep the House of Representatives, to stop the phrase Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. I'm sure you're eager to do that as well.
Well, it wouldn't be a good thing for our country. It would unleash a lot of chaos. It would block every conservative mission that we've been trying to do, from regulatory reform to tax reform to conservative judicial work to reining in the administrative state to trying to rein in our domestic budget. All that would be thrown a terrible curveball, not only by having somebody like Nancy Pelosi as the speaker, but let me tell you something. I work in the financial services arena on Capitol Hill, and the committee chairman would be Maxine Waters, and I can't think of a more anti-capitalist activity than that.
Me neither. Yeah, that's terrifying. Congressman, let's talk a little bit first about border security. What are your thoughts about this caravan? What are your thoughts about troops to the border?
Well, troops to the border, as we have with our National Guards down there, they're doing reconnaissance work. They can be in a helicopter. They can do intel gathering. They do a lot of logistic support in terms of supplies, repairs. If we did have, as the president suggested, have to set up a tent camp for people attempting to seek asylum in the U.S., they could administer and help Department of Homeland Security do that. But the military people, both National Guard and Reserve and active duty, are not armed. They're not performing a law enforcement operation. So it's really in a support role. I think the president's trying to get out ahead of this curve. He's also trying to deter people from coming to the border in this way. If you want to seek asylum in the United States and have a legitimate asylum request, you ought to go to our embassy in your country and fill out the paperwork and propose asylum that way, or present yourself legally at a border crossing. But this sort of work is not constructive to any of those people in a timely way having their case heard effectively.
You kind of have they've not only forced President Trump's hand, but the country's hand as a whole. I mean, you can't have people set out, 2,000 miles away, say, we're coming and you're going to let us in. I mean, what is any sovereign country, any country, supposed to do? But then to say, hey, we're not going to let you in. I'm sorry, because we can't set the precedent. We can't continue to have this happening to where we are just somehow, have this open border policy. Yeah, come on in. 7,000, 10,000, 20,000, we'll take you. I mean, so I think this is there's really no other choice if we're going to be a country.
And I couldn't agree more. That's why we have a broken immigration system. We have a broken border security system. President Trump is effectively trying to implement the border security and immigration reforms as outlined by Bill Clinton 25 years ago. This is not a new problem in the United States. It's just a problem that's gotten worse. We need more cooperation from Mexico. We need Mexico playing a much bigger role here. And this only empowers the cartels, which already control much of the territory in northern Mexico, in my opinion, because it just creates this major distraction, which allows them to increase their human trafficking and drug smuggling operation in the U.S. So this is bad on a lot of fronts.
Yeah, and I have to bring this up before we move on from border security. But the left and the Democrat Party, I mean, you don't hear them talk about it as much anymore, but they want to abolish ICE. They think Immigration and Customs Enforcement are somehow the enemy of the American people. Respond to that, Congressman French Hill.
Well, I've been endorsed by law enforcement here, the Fraternal Order of Police. I believe in law enforcement. Back in June, Democrats would not support a resolution in the House simply to support the Immigration and Customs Enforcement function. It was just a simple thank you resolution and supporting their efforts. We've had a border enforcement arm in this country.
think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to it. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Many of you waking up, and really many of you went to bed last night. You already knew what happened. That's because the Democrat Party took control of the House last night. They needed 23 votes, and what did they ended up get? What did they get? 30-something. What's the count? Let's see. Right now, I think the New York Times is probably, honestly, their election coverage, at least when it comes to their no. I've got the ABC News one pulled up. Yeah, so they needed 23, and right now, let's see, they gained 28 according to the ABC News breakdown. Look at that map right there. Look at how much red across the country there is in that map right there. And yeah, well, the blue wins. Well, this is the way our system works, you know. A great night for Republicans in terms of the Senate pickups, though. Great night in terms of, I mean, it really was a mixed bag. I mean, you had Republican governors races that went well. You had that surprise in Kansas where Kobach lost. But this, you look at Montana. Montana, apparently the Senate, that's a Republican pickup there. Missouri's a Republican pickup. Indiana's a Republican pickup. Looks like that Florida is a Republican pickup. I mean, Breitbart News is reporting that Rick Scott will unseat Democrat Bill Nelson in Florida, although the New York Times website still won't call it because it's so tight. Then you have Ron DeSantis in the gubernatorial race in Florida. He ekes out a win over the socialist Gillum. Fascinating stuff when you really think about it. You know, we were watching the early voting numbers, specifically in Florida. If you go back and you look at the polling in Florida, I mean, you had Rick Scott was going to lose. You had Ron DeSantis, the governor. They were going to lose. That's what all the polling said. But the early voting in Florida showed a different side of things. In 2016, in the early vote, the early vote totals when it comes to Democrat advantage, there was 96,000 Democrat voter lead in 2016. That was only like 20,000 at the beginning of the day yesterday. And so when all of the big cities had already come in, and you had DeSantis up and you had Rick Scott up barely, and the Panhandle hadn't even come in yet, that's when you knew it was going to probably work out well for the Republicans in Florida. And you know, it was an amazing night last night. I was very confused. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Fox News called the race, the entire race for the entire country, with polls still open in California, and they said the Democrats have taken control of the House. We can project the Democrats will take control of the House. And I was scratching my head because there were Democrats who were supposed to win some Florida House seats. They failed to do that. There was a Democrat that was supposed to win in a crucial seat in Kentucky. They didn't do that. Republican won that. There were Democrats who were supposed to pick up some seats in Indiana. They didn't do that. And at this point, it looked like that there wasn't going to be, if there was going to be Democrat control of the House, it was going to be narrow, much more narrow than some of the other people thought. At that point, the Democrat Party last night had only flipped 2 of the 23 seats that they needed. And the polls were still open in California. And I know, look, it looks like it was a bloodbath in California. But it was just striking to me that while the polls were still open, they went ahead and made these predictions when we didn't even have all of the votes counted. I mean, they only had flipped 2. I was just very confused. I kept looking at the numbers, and I was like, well, where are they seeing this? If they're calling it for the Democrats in the House, then there must be numbers they have that I'm not seeing, meaning like actual returns have come in from these districts out west that showed that the Republicans are, down 50 points or something. So it was fascinating, that aspect of it. A lot of people very upset because Fox News called it, and then NBC News called it as well, and then eventually all of the rest of them got on board. If you're just joining us, the Democrat Party will take control of the House of Representatives in the next Congress. The Republicans losing 28 seats, the Democrats gaining 28 seats. So you needed 218 votes, 218 seats to win. The Democrats now at 223 seats to the Republicans 201. Very obviously a divided government now. But what I don't think people are realizing, and you're certainly not going to hear this from the mainstream media, is the fact that the Republican pickups in the Senate make President Trump's job much easier, especially when it comes to Supreme Court justice nominees, if we happen to have another one. You know what I'm saying? Which I think a lot of people are expecting that to be the case. You also have a situation where the Republicans that resigned or decided to not run for re-election, I should say. So Bob Corker is being replaced with Republican Marsha Blackburn, who I'm sure to Taylor Swift's dismay, she was handily elected in the state of Tennessee. Our good friends, our neighbors to the east of us here in Arkansas, was handily elected. And this is going to be somebody who's actually going to be supportive of the Republican platform. Then you have Jeff Flake, who said, I'm not going to run for re-election either. And you have this Martha McSally, who is going to, replace. Now, she's up right now, and I think there's some people that are not calling it for her in Arizona. But it is a very tight race. But it looks like right now that Arizona is going to remain in the Republican column as far as the Senate goes. But then you get these 2 pickups in the Senate. You have Missouri. Let's take a look at Missouri, shall we? Can you throw this up there? Go to the New York Times. I just want you to see just how devastating this was for the Democrats. Josh Hawley, with 51.5% of the vote to Claire McCaskill's 45.5%. Look at how red the state of Missouri is. Especially look at the southern half of Missouri. Look at that, or what would that might be the southern third of Missouri. Into the Boot Heel. Look at all that. That's just incredible. Of course, Claire McCaskill, big Democrat. Her husband's made a lot of money off of the insider knowledge of the Claire McCaskill, being in D.C. Didn't she say she didn't really need the Boot Heel, or she didn't really need the, Southern? Well, look, how's that working out for you? Claire McCaskill's going home packing, and I think that's a good thing. I think the whole country, in terms of conservatives across the country, are very happy about that. We also have Indiana. Can we go over to? Do we have Indiana pulled up? Go to Georgia. Let's take a look at Georgia. I understand that Georgia. Look at this. Brian Kemp with 50.5 to Stacey Abrams 48.6. Doesn't look like Oprah was enough to put Stacey Abrams over the hump. Now, I understand she didn't concede in her speech. She instead said, look, he's up by 100,000 votes or something? 80,000. She didn't concede. She didn't concede. She wants to make sure all the votes are counted. Then if you go down to Florida, let's take a look at Florida again. I watched this one all night, folks, all night. Ron DeSantis, right now at 49.7%, to Andrew Gillum's 49%. What's the vote difference there, Joe? And how many precincts are reporting? Let me see here. Okay, this is all right. So he's up by 56,000 with 99%. I mean, it says right here they've got 6,106 out of 6,111 precincts reporting. Okay, scroll down and let's look at the Senate makeup of that. Okay, then you've got Rick Scott at 50.2%. Notice these haven't been called yet, according to the New York Times. I thought the New York Times had called the Gillum race. Scroll back up. I don't really care about those House races. I want to see the Senate again. Yeah, 50.2%. Is that the same thing? Yeah. So that one says 6,011 precincts out of 6,011 precincts reporting. Rick Scott here looks like he's unseating the Democrat incumbent Bill Nelson, which is huge for Republicans, and really got to be worrisome for Democrats because from what I can tell, electorally speaking, the state of Florida basically is 2016 all over again. So that's definitely something to look at. Let's see, what else do we have here? Can you give me, Joe, can you find me some numbers on Indiana? While I'll tell you about this. Here's one House race that was disappointing, I'm going to be honest. You have Virginia Republican Dave Bratt. You remember Dave Bratt? Dave Bratt was the guy in a Republican primary out of nowhere that unseated Eric Cantor. Remember when Eric Cantor wasn't supposed to lose and it was a huge shock? So he's a limited government guy, Dave Bratt gets unseated by Democrat Abigail Spanberger, and she's like what? She's a former CIA agent or something. How appropriate is that? That it takes a CIA agent to unseat Dave Brandt. Brandt, considered President Trump's strongest ally in the House, lost to Spanberger after being redistricted, losing his centrality. Oh yeah, centrality of support in the Hanover region. Well, if you redistrict, okay, the same thing happened in Pennsylvania, by the way, where you had basically an automatic loss of 3 Republican seats in Pennsylvania because of redistricting. So, anyway, let's see, what else do we have here? Let's see. We've got there's Kevin Kramer. Okay, so here's another pickup we haven't told you about. In the Senate, we have Kevin Kramer defeating Heidi Heitkamp in North Dakota. So that's another pickup. Okay. Kevin Kramer, Senator-elect Kramer, thank you, North Dakota. Representing you in the United States Senate will be the honor of a lifetime. Kramer won the North Dakota Senate election on Tuesday against one of the Senate's most vulnerable Democrats alongside Senator Joe Donnelly of Indiana. Yeah, so we haven't even looked at Joe Donnelly. Joe Donnelly getting the axe as well because Joe Donnelly is, a Democrat in red Indiana. Now, one of the most interesting things to me last night was that in West Virginia, you did have Joe Manchin survive, which I think demonstrates what happens when you, work across the party aisle. But, of course, you're only supposed to do that if you're a Republican and the Democrats are in power, right? But this is an anomaly where you have Republicans in power, and you had Joe Manchin, the Democrat, who was working across the aisle when it came to the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings. And I think let that be a lesson, to these Democrats who are in more moderate or leaning red states. But Heitkamp going down in North Dakota is a big deal. It's a very, very big deal. All right, so we're going to reset here. We got a lot more to get to. We got to go over some of the state issues and what happened with that. We've got the Patriots Vec 746's Tim Loggins will be in studio with us here in just a little bit. Don't go anywhere, folks. Back in just a moment.
the 1890s. This is a standard function of our border security and our internal enforcement of illegal aliens. And we can't get the Democrats on board with it. My own opponent was at an Abolish ICE rally and said, when asked by somebody, what is it? He says, I don't know what ICE is. I mean, they're just it's ridiculous. We need to stand up for the rule of law in this country, and we need to enforce all our laws. And that's why my opponent also has said he thinks sanctuary cities are a good thing. This is eroding the rule of law, and that is something I think America is, over 240 years, the best known for. Our legal judiciary system and our rule of law here. So I'm shocked by the transition to the Democratic Party from strong borders.
Let's face it, times are tough for the Arkansas General Assembly. They're all waiting for the spotlight exposing public corruption to end, so they won't be under so much scrutiny. And during this time, what if you're a legislator and you need money? What if you're slapped with a huge expense? What if your check for consultant services is late this month? Or maybe you just need extra cash now until payday. When that happens, you can't wait. Hi, I'm Bobby Blackmail for the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank, your trusted source to over 135 lenders to get you short-term cash fast. Use the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank today, and you can have up to $12,500 cash in your checking account tomorrow. Dried-up bribes no longer coming from Medicaid entities? Handled. Extra cash until your hopeful acquittal? Done. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get extra cash. Just be an elected official and be comfortable with the status quo, and we'll connect you with a fellow legislator who is ready to loan. It's quick and easy. And don't worry if you can't make the payments, because the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank is designed to help you get through these tough economic times. There are other ways you can pay off your debt, like by voting the way the establishment wants, or by rewarding some with committee chairmanships. So forget about overdraft fees and the spirit of covetousness that sometimes overwhelms the best of lawmakers. Just remember, the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank for short-term cash between colleagues when you need it fast.
Some transactions have long-term consequences.
Paul Harrell, parody.
All right, folks. Welcome back. So we have some of this Indiana information now. I just want you to see this. This was pretty early in the night as well. For those of you just joining us, if you've lived under a rock for the last 24 hours, the Republicans lost 28 seats. The Democrats needed 23 to take control of the House. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think you can call this a blue wave, but this certainly was, this wasn't like, in 2010, Republicans, they got like 68 seats. I mean, it was a huge, huge deal. And this is historic precedent, or this is what happens when you have somebody in the White House, Republican in the White House, or somebody, or a Democrat. It doesn't matter. The House typically is going to switch. It's typically going to move. But so it's bad news for Republicans. There's no way around this. It's bad news for Republicans in the House of Representatives, losing control. All these investigations that are going to be launched now with Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi, they're going to try to call into question everything President Trump has ever done in his life, privately, business-wise. They're going to try to say that Russia really was Russia collusion was the reason why President Trump is in office. That's all going to continue. The House Intelligence Committees, their mission is going to completely change, because now you're going to have Adam Schiff as the chairman and not Devin Nunes. That's going to be very interesting. But aside from that, you do have the Senate committees, okay, that are going to be very much controlled by the Republicans now. Again, you have a pickup in Indiana, looks like a pickup in Florida, pickup in South Dakota, with pickup in Missouri, also with Tennessee holding strong Republican. Looks like Arizona is going to be Republican as well, although that one is very close. So it really was a mixed bag. That's all I can tell you. It was a mixed bag last night on these two fronts. Let's see here. Going back to the overall, let's see, Indiana. Yeah, here it is. Okay, sorry. Indiana, you have Mike Braun defeating the incumbent Joe Donnelly, 52.9% to 40, what does that say, 43.2%, Joe? I mean, he got slaughtered. The state of Indiana just absolutely, I mean, they made a huge statement there. Look at that. Just absolutely slaughtered there. Metaphorically speaking. Metaphorically speaking. But votes certainly have consequences. Now, the President of the United States, I thought this was interesting. At 10:14 last night, the President of the United States tweeted, "Tremendous success tonight. Thank you to all." So, obviously, I'm assuming here, the tremendous success that President Trump is referring to are the gains that were made in the United States Senate. The stuff that happened in the House is obviously it's a huge disappointment. I mean, I there are some people that say it may not be that bad having the Democrats control the House. There are some people that say it may not be that bad because if the Democrat Party wants to have a shot at retaking the White House in 2020, then they're going to have to not impeach the president, not overplay their hand. But let me just assure you, folks, the Democrats are not going to disappoint here. We now are going to experience over the next 2 years, the Democrat Party in the House is going to remind us, the whole country, just how terrible all of them are. With their ridiculous mob-like mentalities, with their ridiculous investigations, with their psychosis, a pattern of psychosis where they cannot fully accept that Hillary Clinton lost the 2016 election. All of this stuff is going to continue, and they're going to remind the people of this country just how out of touch they are. And now, at the same time, I do have to make this a point, because this is what I was thinking when all of the numbers were coming in and it was pretty obvious that the Democrats were going to take the House later in the night. The mainstream media is still somewhat effective at essentially changing public opinion and telling everybody, just how bad President Donald Trump is, according to them. And ignoring his successes and just constantly, they can't say anything positive about him at all, right? I'm worried a little bit about the economy now that the Democrats have taken the House. I think this is going to certainly mean the trade war is going to look a little different. I saw somebody tweet that the biggest winners last night would have been China, because the Democrats are going to try to obstruct President Donald Trump's actions when it comes to tariffs and things like that. So we'll see. But anyway, we've got Mr. Tim Loggins with the Patriots VEC 746 coming up next. At the bottom of the next hour, we'll be talking with national spokesperson on the issues. Mr. Dan Wass will be back on the program. I want to talk about midterm fallout, where he's from New York, and just kind of get his feeling on things. We're going to be doing all of that today. More election coverage. We're going to get into the Arkansas issues. Some very good gains with some Republican seats, knocking off some Democrats here locally in Arkansas. Also, we got to go over the issues. Casinos are now a thing in Arkansas. Much, much more to get to. Don't go anywhere.
Legal immigration improvements of the 1990s, led by Clinton as president, to now an open border, no law enforcement. Why are we trying to enforce the law party? It's a horrible outcome, and I don't understand why anyone supports that, or how they can garner any support for their political position.
Yeah, I really just think I agree with you, and to me they've just gone so radical, and I think it's because this is the easiest way they see to maintain or to acquire power is just to kind of go with whatever the far left in their party is promoting at the time. And I think we saw this with the DACA children and the DACA problem, where President Trump actually, to my dismay, he was willing to give them what they wanted as long as we got border wall funding, was willing to basically give a type of amnesty and a process. And the Democrats, they rejected it because, number one, they don't want Trump to get credit for solving the problem that they say is some massive problem. And number two, I think they'd rather have that segment of the population as victims so that they can, exploit those victims for political power. And I think the Democrat Party made a conscious decision to reject Trump's offer.
100% conscious. I mean, this was led by Chuck Schumer. He shut the government down over it. As you say, Trump proposed a compromise on Dreamer kids for a comprehensive set of changes. Number one, move to a merit-based immigration system instead of only broad family unification. Two, get rid of the diversity lottery system from the very early 1990s, and build this Southwest border protection system of technology, barriers, and personnel that President Clinton outlined as an important national need. So, yes, he did compromise. And guess what? The Democrats walked away from it. Schumer made fun of it. He shut the government down over it. And that kind of cynicism is what turns off American voters. And the Democratic Party is out of touch with the American people on the need for fixing our broken immigration system and creating a Southwest border security system that county judges, local policemen, the Border Patrol, and the American citizens will accept as doing a good job.
We're talking with Congressman French Hill. Want to shift the conversation to the tragedy in Pittsburgh, the synagogue, 11 people dead. You have an anti-Semitic, murderer who apparently thought that Donald Trump was being controlled by the Jews. What were your thoughts when you heard about this terrible tragedy?
Heartbreak, number one, and I really appreciate Rabbi Barry Block here in Little Rock having a
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I didn't get that up there. All right. Here we go. Welcome back to the program this morning. If you're just joining us, the midterm election is over, and the Republicans lost 28 seats. That means the Democrats have 223, which would give them the 218 that they needed to control the House of Representatives. Republicans, 201 seats. The phrase "Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi" is just not good. It's pretty nauseating. We're with Tim Loggins with the Patriots VAC 746. Hey, Tim.
Good morning, Paul. I'll go one that's even worse than that. Maxine Waters as the chairman of the finance.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
It's gonna be a rough 2 years. Some good talk radio content though.
Wow. That's all I can say is wow.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, but the Senate, 100%, the Senate more conservative.
Absolutely. It's a great victory for our country and for Trump. It's a lot more conservative. We lost Jeff Flake, of course, John McCain. We're in a lot better shape on if the Supreme Court has another nomination coming up. We're in a good position in the Senate.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk a little. First of all, folks, the Patriots VAC 746. If you want to know more, you go to Facebook.com. You search for Patriots VAC 746. asked to be a member of the group, the Online Sensation Today. They're on a mission to educate the citizens of Arkansas about your gun rights. We recently had a lot of victories. A judge essentially referenced what the Patriots have been saying for a long time in a case, a Fourth Amendment case, and basically said that you don't need a permit or a permission slip from the government to carry a weapon in this state, open or concealed. It was a huge victory.
Absolutely. It was, it needs to be a state holiday. October 18th, let's celebrate it.
So the reason I'm bringing that up is there was an arrest recently in Forest City, Arkansas, where, well, you tell me what happened, Tim.
Pretty long story, Paul. There was a guy that was kind of harassed in Forest City in a grocery store about a month ago. An off-duty officer that was a security guard came up to him and saw that he was carrying openly and said, "Let me see your permit." And the gentleman explained to the officer, "I don't need a permit in Arkansas," and he explained the law to him. And the officer didn't want to hear it and said, "You can carry your weapon back out to the store, you can leave, or I'm going to cite you." The guy was finished anyway. He left the store. A month later, and it was actually November 1st, he was in a different store, in the dollar store, trying to get some Halloween candy for his kids because the storm had messed up trick-or-treating. Same off-duty officer, apparently has multiple jobs as a security guard, came up to him and said, "Hey, let me see your permit for that weapon." He said, "Look, we've already had this conversation. I don't need a permit. Arkansas's constitutional carry. I'm open carrying. You don't have a permit for open carry." The officer told him he was going to cite him, and the gentleman said, "Look, man, let's get your boss up here. We need to clear this up." So the gentleman called the police department and said, "Hey, you got one of your off-duty officers that's harassing me here at the Fred's Dollar Store. Can you please come up here?" I understand that multiple officers showed up. When they arrived, the gentleman began telling the officers, the lieutenant in particular, what was going on. The lieutenant said, "Hey, let me see that pistol." The gentleman unholstered it and handed it to the lieutenant, and he said, "Hey, it's hot now." The lieutenant said, "Oh, it's hot? Well, I'm going to have to confiscate this weapon because since it's loaded, that's an indication that you intend to kill someone with it."
Oh, wow. Okay. So they're liars. So this is what gives law enforcement a bad name.
Paul, it's even worse than that because when they charged him, carrying a weapon charge is 573-120. They charged him on the citation for 573-121, which is a repealed knife statute that was repealed 7-8 years ago. So they didn't even get the charge right. But their contention is that you have to have a permit in Forest City to carry a weapon openly. They're not even talking about concealed. So in other words, you must have a permit, period, to have a weapon. That's just not what the law says. There's been some obstruction down there. They denied our Freedom of Information request.
Okay.
Which is a violation of the law.
Another violation of the law. So we have law enforcement in Forest City that apparently are tyrants, is what it sounds like to me.
Well, I'm gonna speculate a little bit, and I hate doing that. Not really.
Yeah.
I know on Forest City website we've had interactions with them before, and I say we Patriots. They post that they hold concealed carry classes on their Facebook page, which to me is a violation of the law. They're profiting from their position as police officers. They have a vested interest because they're making money providing that training, and now they're telling citizens, basically strong-arming them, take my class or we're going to arrest you. That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, wow.
And, last time I was on, Paul, we talked about a citizens commission so that normal folks, have some kind of avenue to address these limited officers, these rogue officers.
Yeah, little pockets, yeah.
And the vast majority of law enforcement's not a rogue. They're doing the right thing, doing a hard job, doing a good job. But you got these incidents that come up, like the Walnut Ridge deal, Kirby Ward and Greenbrier. There's pockets of officers that aren't following the law, and citizens have no recourse other than to hire an attorney and sue.
Yeah.
And there needs to be something we can do. And by the way, Forest City's wrong. This is just, I have never heard that you got to have a permit to open carry. Even our governor said open carry is legal.
Yeah.
The attorney general said it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just shaking my head on it.
Yeah. Well, what I think is going to happen is you're going to have the normal The first of all, they're going to waste a citizen's time.
Absolutely.
And that's the worst part about this. But eventually, they're going to have to some judge somewhere or the prosecutor will drop the charges and tell the police officers that they're morons. I hope they're listening. That they're morons, and but a citizen's time will be wasted here. So
well, and he's not going to be convicted. That's
exactly
he
right.
can't be convicted.
They don't even have the right charge.
The Taft case confirmed that. You got to have the unlawful intent to use the weapon against a person, whether it's open or concealed.
Yeah.
The law is very clear on that. 573-120 is very clear. So they're wasting time making a false charge, and I think they're doing it for monetary reasons in Forest City. They're literally making money off of the classes while they're police officers, and they're advertising that on their Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go on their Facebook page, guys, and you make a comment about that, they delete your comments, obviously.
Yeah.
They don't want to talk about it.
You also just go to the if there's any trolls out there and you got to get your troll fix on today, maybe you're upset that the Republicans lost the House. Head on over to the Forest City police Facebook page and tell them that they've made a mistake.
Paul, and I would love to say they made a mistake. This is not a mistake. The incident in Walnut Ridge was not a mistake. That was police overreach. And that's what we're really dealing with is there's instances around this state where bad officers are fostering, I don't know, distrust of police.
Yeah.
And the majority of officers are doing a good job, but you've got these isolated incidents that continue to happen, and we don't have a route to address it.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a shame, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. We should have a good relationship with law enforcement.
We're talking with Tim Loggins. Tim is with the Patriots Fact 746. Again, you can find him on Facebook. So I want to get to some election numbers here in a minute across Arkansas. Really, really interesting stuff. But before I do, I have to remind everybody that coming up this January is the legislative session, and there are a lot of people that think that our government may try to pass red flag legislation where you can confiscate somebody's guns just over an accusation, violating just a ton of rights. I just want to say that there was a story out of Maryland recently where they were trying to take somebody's guns away under red flag law, and the police officers killed the guy. They shot him dead in his own house.
That's correct.
Did you follow that story?
I did. A relative made the claim to the police that this gentleman was a danger to himself or others, which is what red flag says. Police came to his door, knocked on his door. The gentleman was armed. They said, "Hey, we're here to get your guns." He initially set his weapon down and was trying to follow their instructions. At some point, it escalated. They got into a physical confrontation with the police, and they wound up shooting the gentleman. May have been justified, may not.
Who knows? It's just
I haven't seen the actual reports or the body cams or anything like that. The gentleman may, in fact, have been crazy. I don't know.
Right.
The bottom line is you've got a gentleman that had committed no crime, and because of this red flag law, now he's a criminal that's shot and dead.
Yeah.
And that's what it's coming to. When they come to get your guns and you haven't done anything, how dangerous is that?
Yeah. You just got one person makes an accusation, then the judge says, go take his guns, and it's a recipe for disaster. It is a recipe for disaster where, and we've got to fight this in Arkansas. We cannot allow them to pass this.
The gentleman that actually introduced this in JPR, Letting.
Yeah.
He won.
He did. He won. He's the next senator from Fayetteville area.
So I anticipate this is going to come back next session, and yeah, we've got to mobilize against this. We cannot allow this. This is dangerous legislation. I've got to prove that I'm not going to commit a crime in the future. How do you do that? You just can't do that. My First Amendment, my Second Amendment, my Fourth Amendment, my Fifth Amendment, my Seventh Amendment, and my 14th Amendment are going to be violated with the red flag law.
That's crazy.
And we can't do it.
It's absolutely crazy. All right, again, we're talking with Tim Loggins. All right, let's get to some state races. All right, so, Tim, some of the races that stood out to you, some surprises, some Republican pickups here.
We had one, Craig Christensen defeated the Democratic chair, and I'm not sure the district. I think it's 46 or 47.
Yeah.
That was a huge pickup.
John Michael Gray.
John Michael Gray lost.
Has been defeated. The Democrat chairman has been defeated. That's incredible.
That is a constitutional win. I mean, that is a win for conservatives across the state. That's huge.
Mm-hmm. That is a big one. Let me see here. I'm trying to. Where's the Secretary of State's website? Here it is. And we go down just real quick, just so you know, folks. We have Congressman Rick Crawford wins handily, 69% of the vote. French Hill winning with 51%. Arkansas, we did our job when it comes to this House situation. Congressman Steve Womack will be serving another term, as well as Congressman Bruce Westerman. If we get into the state elections here, if I can get this pulled up, we also had another interesting pickup. Democrat Chris Ritchie, I saw, lost, according to the Secretary of State's website. So Jason Dobson, who's been on this program before, Republican, turning that what was a blue district, turning that red. Just it seems like there were a lot of people that just voted Republican straight down the ticket.
There was something of a red wave in Arkansas, and that race you're talking about is actually a very seminal race as far as seniority in the House. It's going to have huge implications down the road for some of our good conservatives here in Northeast Arkansas.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. We have, you have some Democrats holding the line, let's see, David Fielding went ahead and he did win his race against the Republican challenger Wade Andrews. You have this Democrat Don Glover winning in House District 11, and that was where Ricky Lattimore and I think the incumbent who was running as an independent, Mark McElroy, were running. It looks like Mark McElroy, and Ricky Lattimore certainly ended up those two running. They ended up enabling the Democrat to take that seat.
They split the vote.
Yeah, they split the vote. Yeah, but yeah, here's that State Representative District 12. This is the Jason Dobson race, and Representative Chris Ritchie, the Democrat, losing this. 61% cast their vote for the Republican Jason Dobson. That's huge.
That's huge. It is.
Yeah.
Just want to say, in Northeast Arkansas, Patriots are pretty pleased with the outcome of these elections. We had one that we knew was coming that I would say is not a victory for gun rights, Senate District 19. But it is what it is.
You mean with James Sturch, yeah.
James Sturch winning, he's not a friend of gun rights. But overall in Northeast Arkansas, we picked up some real friends of gun rights and gun laws, and we held the line on those that we needed to hold. Joe Jett, he's come to 3 or 4 of our meetings in Northeast Arkansas. That was a win. He had a very liberal opponent that was in favor of assault weapons ban and red flag. And Scott Baltz, I know he's a Democrat, but he's come to our meetings. He interacts with us. Had a lot of conversations with him, and he won over Marsh Davis narrowly. Mm-hmm. But you know what? That's a win for Patriots because Scott's pledged constitutional care and he won't vote against it. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, when it comes to focusing on that one issue, I mean, that's you guys are extremely effective at that. Here it is again, folks. Representative Michael John Gray here in Arkansas, the Democrat chairman of the Republican Party. I'm sorry, of the Democrat Party, losing to a challenger, Craig Christensen, with 50.68% to his 49.32%. That is a huge disappointment for the Democrats here in Arkansas.
I will say this. Craig came to our meet and greet down in Newport. He spoke at it. We probably had 65 folks there. Michael John did not come. And I'm not going to say that had anything to do with the outcome, but you know what? You can take whatever you want to from that.
Yeah.
Craig lost by 50 votes in Jackson County, which is a Democrat county. So I'm pretty tickled with Craig's race here.
Yeah. No doubt. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. It looks like things worked out really well for the most part. There was one up in Northwest Arkansas.
I saw that.
State Representative Charlie Collins being defeated, which I thought was interesting. Of course, it is a more liberal area up in that neck of the woods, or a part of Fayetteville there. What were your thoughts on that? Charlie Collins. The leftist media, they're spinning the Charlie Collins loss as saying the man who authored the gun bill, the college gun bill, defeated.
I would have a different take from that, Paul, and I think I can look at national elections and kind of take that and apply it to the state races. Mm-hmm. Charlie Collins did author the campus carry bill, but he also went along with all of the infringements that came with it from the governor's nephew and the governor. He didn't come out strong on conservative principles, although he was fairly conservative. He didn't make that strong stand. You look at Dan Sullivan, you look at Brant Smith, you look at conservatives that aren't compromising. They won. Okay, you've got some around the state that weren't necessarily hardline conservative, and they were willing to compromise the principles on different issues. Democrats beat them. You can't beat a Democrat trying to be moderate.
You know, that you could maybe even extrapolate that out to the national races
Absolutely.
as well. You know, if you're just joining us, you know, the Republicans did lose the House of Representatives. They made gains in the Senate nationally, which is incredible. The Senate's looking great and more conservative than ever. But some of these House members that lost, some are saying, you know, nationally, some of these House members that lost, they were kind of some of these types of Republicans that feel like they have to apologize for the president constantly.
I would say that nationally, Paul, the never Trumpers, they lost big. President Trump won. Now, the never Trumpers, okay, when you apologize for your beliefs and your convictions, you have difficulty convincing folks to vote for you.
Yeah.
That's what it really boils down to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think generally that's true. I think if you're President Trump this morning, you've got to be happy with the way the statewide races went, because it looks like if President Trump were to have run for re-election last night, he would have won Florida.
Absolutely.
You know, in these other big states. So.
It was a red victory in the Senate. Definitely, it was a red wave in Arkansas, and that's a mixed bag, by the way. But that's okay. We held the line. Arkansas did its part. From a Patriots perspective, Paul, we're pretty pleased with most of the outcomes. Our membership is still growing. Our interaction with these elected officials is still growing. We're having meetings all over the state. We got elected folks coming to these meetings. We got one this Saturday down in Fordyce. Northwest Arkansas just had one last weekend. Okay. We're making a difference one election at a time, one politician at a time, one town at a time. We have these things like Forest City that's bringing attention to us. And I hate it for that gentleman in Forest City, but you know what? That's going to open some folks' eyes in these towns. You got to stand up for your rights.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a good outcome eventually for citizens of Arkansas.
Yeah, I think you're right. Anytime you have an incident, it is an opportunity to educate, and so that's very important there. Tim Loggins with Patriots of X 746. I appreciate you being in town this morning and spending a little time with us.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All righty, folks. We got more election coverage coming your way next. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Legal immigration improvements of the 1990s, led by Clinton as president, to now an open border, no law enforcement. Why are we trying to enforce the law party? It's a horrible outcome. And I don't understand why anyone supports that,
Yeah.
or how they can garner any support for their political position.
Yeah, I really just think I agree with you, and to me they've just gone so radical, and I think it's because this is the easiest way they see to maintain or to acquire power is just to kind of go with whatever the far left in their party is promoting at the time. And I think we saw this with the DACA children and the DACA problem, where President Trump actually, to my dismay, he was willing to give them what they wanted as long as we got border wall funding, was willing to basically give a type of amnesty and, a process. And the Democrats, they rejected it because, number one, they don't want Trump to.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. If you're just joining us, Republicans taking the House, losing the House last night. The Democrats needed 23 seats. So far, they gained 28 seats. 28 seats, which puts the Democrats' total House number at 223 to the Republicans' 201. Definitely a divided government. Things working out really well, though, for Republicans in the Senate as they hold where they need to hold and they make some really good pickups. So we're gonna keep following this and looking at this. Let's go to Arkansas, though, with the issues. We want to make sure we report on this. Issue number 2, which was a voter ID amendment to the Arkansas Constitution, passing overwhelmingly with 79.54%, according to the Arkansas Secretary of State's website. There was 20.46% against a voter ID amendment. Issue 4, which was an amendment to require 4 licenses to be issued for casino gaming at casinos. There was 54.05% for it and 45.95% against it. Now, what's interesting here, this one we need to definitely expand on this and see if we can't get some specifics, because I really would like to know what the breakdown in Pope County was. We're going to get to that in a minute. Issue number 5, an act to increase the Arkansas minimum wage. There were 68.40% for it and 31.60% against it. This is something that was predictable. I knew, as I told you, that this was likely going to pass because most people simply do not understand the arguments as to why raising the minimum wage is bad for the very people it purports to help. Most people don't understand it because it takes a level of critical thought we simply don't teach in this country anymore. Not to mention, not everybody is a small business owner. Small business owners are the minority. So there's a minority of people who understand how bad this is going to affect them in their business, where the majority just think a lot of times, this is why we do our small business spotlights when we can, that, if you're a small business owner, you basically call all the shots and you kick your feet up on your desk while smoking, Cuban cigar, and everything's fine, when in reality, running a small business can keep you up at night, and it is really, really a difficult thing to do. And that's why not everybody does it. Folks, we've got one more hour coming your way next. Coming up at the bottom of the next hour, we'll be talking with Dan Wass, who is going to be going over a little bit of the midterms with us, and we're going to get his reaction as to what he thought. What are we facing next? Well, endless investigations. The phrase Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. I have a bad taste in my mouth, I'm not going to lie. But it did go well for the Republicans in the Senate last night.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Get credit for solving the problem that they say is some massive problem. And number two, I think they'd rather have that segment of the population as victims so that they can, exploit those victims for political power. And I think the Democrat Party made a conscious decision to reject Trump's offer.
100% conscious. I mean, this was led by Chuck Schumer. He shut the government down over it. As you say, Trump proposed a compromise on Dreamer kids for a comprehensive set of changes. Number one, move to a merit-based immigration system instead of only broad family unification. Two, get rid of the diversity lottery system from the very early 1990s, and build this Southwest border protection system of technology, barriers, and personnel that President Clinton outlined as an important national need. So, yes, he did compromise. And guess what? The Democrats walked away from it. Schumer made fun of it. He shut the government down over it. And that kind of cynicism is what turns off American voters. And the Democratic Party is out of touch with the American people on the need for fixing our broken immigration system and creating a Southwest border security system that county judges, local policemen, the Border Patrol, and the American citizens will accept as doing a good job.
We're talking with Congressman French Hill. Want to shift the conversation to the tragedy in Pittsburgh, the synagogue, 11 people dead. You have an anti-Semitic, murderer who apparently thought that Donald Trump was being controlled by the Jews. What were your thoughts when you heard about this terrible tragedy?
Heartbreak, number one, and I really appreciate Rabbi Barry Block here in Little Rock having a large, well-attended ecumenical service here to pray for the victims in Pittsburgh. Governor Hutchison was there. Senator Bozeman and I attended, Lieutenant Governor Griffin. It was a heartwarming event because there's no place in anti-Semitism. My father-in-law was a U.S. Army captain in April 1945. He was the U.S. Army officer that walked into Buchenwald concentration camp in Germany to free that camp. Patton came the next day. The furnace is still on. The body's still stacked. I mean, this is a horror that America has fought a war to reject. There's no place in our society for lack of religious tolerance. I've been in Egypt trying to get President El-Sisi to support our Coptic Christians and treat them with more respect and dignity in Egypt. I've worked with the Hungarians on rebuilding Christian villages over in Iraq. We must have religious tolerance. We must preach that as Americans, not just abroad, though, in our own country. And there's just no place for this sort of horror. So it was a sad day. That was my response. A very sad day.
Well, and you would think, of course, no, you wouldn't think. And in this day and age, with the way politics is, with the vitriolic hatred for the right, for Donald Trump specifically, of course, they tried to say that this was the president's fault. They tried to blame it on speech. You even had some people on Twitter, some people on the left say, well, this is what you get for moving the Jerusalem. Was it really worth it to move the embassy, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? Somehow, again, making this the president's fault. And it's just, we've got to get to a place, Congressman Hill, I'm sure you would agree, where we just don't want to win at all costs. You know what I mean? Like we want to make a political victory out of everything that's whether it's good, whether it's a tragedy. Enough's enough,
Well, Steve Scalise didn't go out on the national media after he and a dozen of my colleagues were gunned down by a crazy Bernie Sanders supporter in Alexandria, Virginia, and blame the Democratic Party or Bernie Sanders or Nancy Pelosi about the crazed mania of that guy in June last year. It's ridiculous. The hypocrisy is dripping. And so I'm with you on this. We've got to get out of this sort of behavior. It's adolescent, juvenile, back and forth behavior, and return to the love and affection we have,
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, good morning. Welcome. Hour number 2 this morning on Conduit News Radio. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. Last night did not go great for Republicans, but it didn't go terribly wrong for Republicans either. And the same thing can be said for the Democrats. It didn't go great for them, but it didn't go bad for them. The Democrats are largely the more of the winners, though, I would say, by flipping an entire House of Congress. So if you're just joining us, they needed 23, they got 28. Republicans making big gains, I think, big gains in the Senate because they are such valuable seats. I'm going to kind of give you the two different versions of what you're going to hear today. You're going to hear, well, first of all, President Trump said that it was a tremendous success. He's having a press conference this morning at, I think, 11:30 Eastern. So at 10:30, the president will be talking about the tremendous success. He tweeted this last night: "Tremendous success tonight. Thank you to all." This is the Gateway Pundit. The Gateway Pundit, they're headlined by Jim Hoft. Trump makes history by adding seats to GOP Senate majority in his first midterm election. Thanks to President Trump, Republicans picked up 4 new Senate seats on Tuesday, with wins in Florida, Missouri, Indiana, and North Dakota. In Arizona, Montana, and Nevada are still being decided. By the end of the night, President Trump will gain at least 1 Senate seat and as many as 5 new GOP senators. This is historic, and President Trump was eager to tell the nation of his success tonight. The president quoted Ben Stein tonight, quote, "There's only been 5 times in the last 105 years that an incumbent president has won seats in the Senate in an off-year election. Mr. Trump has magic about him. This guy has magic coming out of his ears. He is an astonishing vote-getter and campaigner. The Republicans are unbelievably lucky to have him, and I'm just awed at how well they've done. It's all the Trump magic. Trump is the magic man. Incredible. He's got the entire media against him, attacking him every day, and he pulls out these enormous wins." Ben Stein, The Capitalist Code. Donald Trump, there's only been 5 times in the last 105 years that an incumbent president has won Senate seats in an off-year election. So that's Trump is obviously tweeting that last night. So that's what you're going to hear, and that's true. It is true. It is historic to make the gains in the Senate that you have. It is historically typical, though, for the House to go to the opposite party of whoever is in the White House in a midterm election. Now, on the other side of the aisle, you have this headline from Zero Hedge. Trump declares victory as he faces 2-year struggle with House. Despite record voter turnout and a staggering $5 billion being spent towards both parties, Democrats hope for a blue wave. They failed to materialize. It failed to materialize on Tuesday. Instead, the reality was closer to a purple wash. Democrats won a slight majority in the House They were up 26 seats at last count. Again, now they're up to 28. 3 more than the 23 needed to flip control, with more races expected to be called in their favor on Wednesday. But Republicans picked up seats in the Senate, solidifying what had been a razor-thin majority. Almost all of those seats were won by staunch conservatives who are expected to back Trump's agenda. Meanwhile, it's unlikely that the Democrats will come anywhere close to the 40 seats they would have needed to signify a tsunami-like victory. However, at least one Democratic narrative was validated, as 18 of the 29 Republican districts that flipped to the Democrats were won by women, cementing the Year of the Woman narrative. So that's an article over at Zero Hedge. I will say this. Can we talk about Texas for a second? We didn't talk about Texas at all yesterday. Or, I'm sorry, last hour. Isn't it weird that I think that the hours of the show are days of the week? Hashtag Talk Radio Life. Texas is interesting to me. I mean, look how red it is. Show how red Texas is. Throw that map up there, Joe. Texas, when it first came out, when the ABC News, I was watching ABC News. You say, why? Because I don't have cable, number one, and number two, it comes through the air digitally. That's why. So I'm watching ABC News, and I'm watching George Snuffleupagus, and the reports come in, and they turn it to Nate Silver, 538, and they're like, uh-oh, the Republicans are winning these seats in Florida. They're not supposed to be winning. That's not good. We've now moved it to a slight chance that the Democrats win the House. And I thought, wow, Nate Silver's really trying to, hedge expectations here. And then things start to get a little bit better for the Dems, and then all of a sudden the Texas polls close and the Texas votes come in, and Beto O'Rourke is ahead for a time. And then you have people, oh, it's a dead heat in Texas. Oh, my gosh, O'Rourke's going to win, right? And you have these people on ABC News, Martha Radishes, and she's like, it could be. But then the people on ABC News, they were just like, Beto O'Rourke, he is the future. And it doesn't even matter if he loses tonight. He is something else. He is the future. What was the total vote? What was the final vote tally in Texas? Can you scroll over to click on it? Will it tell us? I just want to know the Senate breakdown. Cruz versus O'Rourke overall. Well, if you can just get us the overall, like, I want to know how much Cruz won by. Because for a while he was losing, for a while, because there were still so many red counties out. And regardless, this is the point I want to make on Texas. Okay, $65 million was poured into Beto O'Rourke's campaign. Thanks to James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, we know that some of that money went to the caravan, which is crazy when you're misappropriating campaign funds. So, but $65 million in Texas against Ted Cruz will buy you a loss, right? Think about that for a second. You raise $65 million in a state like Texas just so you can lose. What does that say about how conservative Texas is? That's a pretty big deal. What does it say, Joe? Go ahead and throw that up there. Oh, okay. Well, anyway, it's definitely a mixed bag last night is what I would say. How many of you out there were a little upset when Fox News called it for the Democrats, with only the Democrats flipping 2 of the 23 seats that they needed, with the polls in California still open? How many of you were upset about that? I was very frustrated. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand how you could call an entire election when there were votes out west that hadn't even come in yet. They were just doing it based off, I guess, speculation, if you will. We also have Florida. The election results, if you're just joining us out of Florida, are very interesting. Because Ron DeSantis, even the New York Times is saying Ron DeSantis wins Florida with 49.7% of the vote to the Democrats' 49%. And in the Senate, they haven't called it yet. Rick Scott, the New York Times website, Rick Scott at 50.2% of the vote to Bill Nelson's 49.8% of the vote. So so here it is. So Ted Cruz wins with 50.9% of the vote to Beto O'Rourke's 48.3%. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what $65 million will get you. $65 million will get you a 1-point loss in the great state of Texas. Look at that map. And see, O'Rourke had the lead when Austin came in. Austin is like this liberal bastion, this progressive bastion. That's where the University of Texas is. And see, look at all these blue counties. Why are the counties, why are they so blue close to the border of Texas? Is that because is that going to be your Hispanic population? Well, but look at this. Look at the rest of Texas. See, look at Dallas went blue. See, Dallas was in. Austin was in. I don't think Houston was in yet. San Antonio was in when the media started saying, and it was on the front page of Drudge, Ted Cruz is going to lose. Yeah, that didn't happen. That didn't happen at all. Folks, telephone number is 870-275-9799. Arkansas news, to go over these results again, we had some interesting results, some good news for Republicans. You had Craig Christensen, who was on this program last week. I believe he was on last Thursday or Friday. Craig Christensen defeating Democrat Michael John Gray narrowly. This is a huge pickup. This is the chairman of the Democrat Party of Arkansas. The Republicans did this strategically. They strategically targeted Michael John Gray because they thought it'd be funny. Let me just be honest. The Republicans thought, hey, wouldn't it be funny if the state representative, who's also the chair of the Democrat Party in Arkansas, if we found him an opponent and beat him? Well, they did just that. They did just that. Also, you've got Democrat Chris Ritchie, Blue District. He lost to Mr. Jason Dobson. Jason Dobson also came on this program a few times. That is a big pickup here in Arkansas, where you have the Republicans gaining on the Democrats. Interestingly, though, you do have a situation in Northwest Arkansas where Charlie Collins loses. Charlie Collins lost. Go ahead and throw this headline up there. This is how the Gazette put it. They said, State Representative Charlie Collins, guns on campus sponsor, loses re-election bid in Arkansas. Now, this is interesting because Democrat Denise Garner defeated Republican Charlie Collins, so she will be his replacement. The Gazette writes that Collins last year sponsored legislation that the state's Republican governor signed into law, allowing someone with a concealed handgun license to carry at state colleges, some bars, and government buildings if they undergo 8 hours of active shooter training. Now, this was obviously the left freaked out. I mean, they freaked out when Charlie Collins ran this bill. Now, I never liked the bill. Well, I didn't like the finished product, and I don't want to rehash all of that, but I will tell you this. State Representative Charlie Collins was constantly combating the left on Twitter, saying that, we need to prevent mass shootings because gun-free zones attract crazy people. And on that concept, Charlie Collins is absolutely correct. It is the gun-free zones where crazy people go to murder people and enact their sick fantasies or mental problems. Right? That's exactly what happens. The issue here, though, is we just had we were talking to Tim Loggins last hour, is the amount of infringements that kind of came along with that. It reinforced this idea of needing a permission slip and everything else, and it was just generally a really, really bad piece of legislation. The piece of legislation is so bad that the Arkansas State Police is actually ignoring portions of it, ignoring what the law requires, just because if they enforced it, it would make the instructors in these classes so mad it would just basically destroy the instructor industry right now. I mean, that's what's going on, and they're probably going to try to fix it or something, undo what they've done in some capacity in the next session. But I will just tell you, State Representative Charlie Collins got a ton of flack. He's from Northwest Arkansas. He's from that U of A area where the students there just thought he was the worst person in the world because he supported arming teachers or making some avenue, even if it was more red tape, for you to exercise your Second Amendment right. If you can, it's not my definition of what the Second Amendment is, but some people's definition. Let's put it that way. So that is a shocker, though. The fact that State Representative Charlie Collins loses is a shocker. A lot of people were. I expected him to win, but it may very well be the fact that the people on the left were able to, promote this anti-gun mentality. I mean, you also have State Representative Greg Leding defeating Don Clements to go on to replace Uvalde Lindsay in the Arkansas Senate. So that's just a blue-to-blue swap. That stays blue. That was unfortunate. I really thought Greg Leding, he got the endorsement of the paper even after he tried to bully Don Clements on video with his size advantage, and it just was really, really disturbing. And so Greg Leding winning there, and that just tells you that the Democrats, when they're in a populated area, they're going to vote down the ticket, very much like Republicans do in conservative areas. But anyway, very, very much a mixed bag nationwide. Not so much a mixed bag here in Arkansas. Arkansas, folks, you guys, we did what we needed to do. The four congressmen, you've got Rick Crawford, French Hill, Bruce Westerman, Steve Womack. They're all going back to the House, right? And I know they've now lost the House, but it's really kind of a slim majority that the Democrats now have. We did what we had to do to make sure things remained the same. Now, Joe is so upset in there because of the minimum wage passing. Joe says he's upset of the issues in general. Now, the reason Joe's so upset, he said, do people just vote yes on all the issues? Is that what happens? It's just, if there's an issue on the ballot, they just vote for it? And historically, Joe, the answer is yes. Ever since I've been covering Arkansas politics, if there's an issue on the ballot, it's just people want to vote for it. I don't understand it, but most of the time people want to vote for stuff.
I'm not okay. So I know people have the right to vote the way they want. Not against that at all. But you do also have the right to say no to things. You don't have to. You
do.
People you don't have to say yes to literally everything.
Well,
because that's how you get into hot water is by signing contracts or, in this case, voting for things you have no idea what you're voting for.
Obviously, whoever, whether the issue on the ballot comes from the legislature or it comes by petition, the title is going to be carefully crafted to try to get people to vote for. They're going to do the best they can to get you to vote for what they're asking you to vote for. That's obvious. Anybody, but it's to the point where, let's just say it is certainly worth noting that if you can get an issue on the ballot, the chances of it passing are astronomically high. And they really are. I mean, people will just vote. Minimum wage, yep, sure. I mean, now the voter ID pass, that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's the only thing I'm not upset about.
Yeah, but the casinos, that's more of a. I think there was a legitimate argument to be had. For on both sides of it. I mean, I talked to some people on the casino issue. I voted against the casino issue. Because I just don't think I should. Do
you know what county said no to the casino issue?
Which one?
Pope County.
Oh, really? Do you have that pulled up?
Yeah, right there. It was 60.59% against and 39.41% for.
Let me see this. Hang on a second. Yep, there we go. Pope County. I'm looking at it right now. 60% of Pope County was against the casinos, 39 were for it, and it passes anyway. Now, the question is, does the apparently Pope County had another ballot, another issue on the ballot to where they could have, if you voted for it, you could have your say to negate issue 4. And I would assume that passed as well just by looking at these numbers, but I don't have that in front of me. But look at the rest of the state. Hang on a second. So Washington, no, look at that. Washington County barely voted against it, 50.55 to 49.49. They go up to Benton County. Benton County,
Searcy County was the
voted
same
against
way.
it.
Searcy County was the same way, 50.45 for and 49.55
Carroll voted against the casinos. Boone County voted against the casinos. Newton voted against the casinos. Well, of course, Newton is. They're right by Pope County. But listen to this, like Johnson County, 56% for. So they obviously want a casino right next door to them. Let's see, who else do we have? Logan County, right next to Pope, voting for it. Yell County, 51% voting for it. Interesting. But, but here over in Craighead County, where I am broadcasting from at this moment, 51% for, 48% against. Down in Poinsett County, 59% for, 40% against. Now, if you go over to, let's see here, Crittenden County, where this will be located in West Memphis, the people of West Memphis want this. 66% for and 33% against. Likewise, let's see if we can hit Garland County. Why is this not coming up? Hang on a second. Go over to Garland County, 54% for the casinos and 45% against. So it looks like casinos are coming to Arkansas. Going to be right in some people's backyard. Jefferson County, 64%. That's Pine Bluff. They're going to get a casino. They want that casino, 64% to 35%. We're going to take a break here. We got to go. Back in a moment. Oh, yeah, we do need to go to break right now. Yeah, sorry. Back in a minute, folks. This was the president's fault. They tried to blame it on speech. You even had some people on Twitter, some people on the left say, well, this is what you get for moving the Jerusalem. Was it really worth it to move the embassy, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem? Somehow, again, making this the president's fault. And it's just, we've got to get to a place, Congressman Hill, I'm sure you would agree, where we just don't want to win at all costs. You know what I mean? Like we want to make a political victory out of everything that whether it's good, whether it's a tragedy. Enough's enough,
Well, Steve Scalise didn't go out on the national media after he and a dozen of my colleagues were gunned down by a crazy Bernie Sanders supporter in Alexandria, Virginia, and blame the Democratic Party or Bernie Sanders or Nancy Pelosi.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
President Trump already fighting back here. President Trump, if the Democrats think they're going to waste taxpayer money investigating us at the House level, then we will likewise be forced to consider investigating them for all of the leaks of classified information and much else at the Senate level. Two can play at that game. Interesting. All right, folks, we're going to be right back. Going to talk a little bit more about this with Mr. Dan Wass. Don't go anywhere.
about the crazed mania of that guy in June last year. It's ridiculous. The hypocrisy is dripping. And so I'm with you on this. We've got to get out of this sort of behavior. It's adolescent, juvenile, back and forth behavior, and return to the love and affection we have, as Americans for each other. Let's debate these policies. Let's debate them on the policy point.
Yes.
And I go back, and I tell you, Barry Block, the rabbi, did a great job. He quoted George Washington's famous letter, I think from 1790, to Jews in America. And I commend that to all your listeners to read George Washington's own words. And one thing that struck with me, he said in it, to bigotry, no sanction, to persecution, no assistance. And it was a beautiful letter about America's commitment to religious freedom in this country. It's a founding tenet of our country, and no better espoused than our first president. So this Twitter storm, this cable TV nonsense is not constructive to building a better country.
We're talking with Congressman French Hill. Tell me about the national park backlog. I know you're involved in trying to solve this.
Yeah, well, Bruce Westerman, who represents our great state in House, is on the House Natural Resources Committee, and there have been some real issues about wildlife conservation to help our hunters, our fishermen, our wildlife up and down the Mississippi Flyway. And also in our national park system across the country, we have a large maintenance backlog. Just you can imagine that over the 100 years of the park system. So we have a constructive bill that will take part of the oil and gas royalty revenues that the Interior Department gets now from leasing our oil and gas operations on federal land.
Hello, Jonesboro. It's
and
Glenn
make sure
Beck.
that's used.
And I can tell you, in
keep
my
up
experience
this national
in
park
Jonesboro,
backlog, and
the agent that
also
I've come to
use
trust
part of
is
it
Eric
for
Birch.
wildlife
Now,
restoration.
Eric
This
has
is
a brilliant system of
good
attracting
way to a
buyers,
conservative
but he also has
way
experience
to,
in knowing the
maintain
market,
our
great
obligations
negotiation
there
skills.
and enhance
Eric can
those
even offer
assets,
you an
but
immediate
without,
cash offer if your home
burdening
doesn't sell
the
on time.
taxpayer in a
This
bigger
is
way.
something you can take to the bank.
So
Working with
kinda
Eric
winding
is
down the
totally
interview
risk-free,
here.
since at any point during the listing, if
people
you're
gotta
not
go
happy,
vote.
you're
I mean,
free to leave the
we
contract.
Can, we can,
but don't
we
worry,
can sit here and we
you
can
won't.
talk
Nobody
about
ever does because
why
Eric
the
always
country
sells
needs to
the
keep
home.
moving in
If you want to
that
save a whole lot of time and
trajectory it is
frustration,
now,
this is
but,
the phone
That's
call.
not going to happen if people don't get out and vote, especially in your district, District 2.
I'm telling all my constituents, I'm telling voters across the state of Arkansas, we are better off as a country than we were 2 years ago. We're better off in national security. We're better off in regulatory policy. We're better off individually with lower taxes, keeping more of our earnings.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
And so we start here and looking at this map. The Democrats Party, they needed 23. They needed 23, and they got 28. And so the Democrats, now we have to hear the phrase Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. President Donald Trump just tweeted this. In all fairness, Nancy Pelosi deserves to be chosen Speaker of the House by the Democrats. If they give her a hard time, perhaps we will add some Republican votes. She has earned this great honor. What are they saying here? They're saying, well, some of these Democrats that won, they campaigned on distancing themselves from Nancy Pelosi because she's crazy. She's crazy. But anyway, with more on this and the midterms and election fallout, let's go to our good friend, Mr. Dan Wass, who's the author of Good Gun, Bad Guy. Dan, how you doing this morning, sir?
Hey, great, Paul. Thanks. How are you? Did you get enough sleep, or did you stay up all night?
I kind of stayed up too late, I'm going to be honest, so it was kind of rough getting up this morning, but I'm here with bells on, so... just tell me how are things? You're calling out of New York, so what's the feeling up there?
Well, politically, New York still sucks. We have we have Cuomo is still our governor, and we have the far left radical Kirsten Gillibrand as a senator. So it's still no good. Oh, and and we got that bobblehead Ocasio-Cortez down in the city, 14th district down in New York.
Yeah, I'm expecting
New York.
Ocasio-Cortez at some point. I think she's literally going to. So they're going to ask, well, how would you pay for this new government program? At some point, I think she will say, well, we'll just grow the money on trees. I think she's going to say that at some point.
Yeah, I really don't understand how people can vote for her, but I mean, even Democrats have to look at her and go, wow, she really just doesn't have a clue.
Yeah.
But hey, let's let her run with that and see how poorly she does. But it looks like we lost some and we won some. So as far as the Senate, it looks like we're good. And as far as the House, of course, we lost the House, but we kind of expected that. But the ratio, if you look at the ratio of House seats versus Senate seats, it's almost an even ratio of leverage of power. So it's going to be real interesting. I just wonder, if the Democrats get to keep the old band together. They got Mad Max, they got Frankenfeinstein, Pocahontas, Eli, the whole gaggle of nut jobs is still together. They're still going to probably try to impeach. They may go for continuing the Russia investigation, more resist. So we'll see. And I think it'll all play out very nicely for 2020 for Republicans.
Yeah, the silver lining here, like you said, is the Senate. Florida, Missouri, Indiana,
Ohio.
You got South Dakota, or is it North Dakota? I think it's South Dakota, and then maybe Montana. I haven't seen this. There's a lot of holdouts. Right. You know what I'm saying? Some holdouts.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
But it does seem that if this was good for President Trump's 2020 hopes. I mean, if he had performed this well in Florida, the Democrats really haven't been able to demonize him enough. I mean, it seems like Florida would have still gone for Trump last night if he had been on the ballot.
Yeah, it did seem like that. I was really happy to see that. And, Ted Cruz held on in Texas against, what did they say, almost $70 million in campaign money that O'Rourke had. So I was proud and happy to see Ted Cruz hang on there. I think overall we did pretty well, and we should be proud. And, typically we would lose, the president's party would lose a heck of a lot more than what we lost. Previous presidents have lost, twice and triple as much as we lost this term. So President Trump, the Trump effect is a real thing, and it's really powerful for Republicans.
Wow. We have, just real quick, this is from the Gateway Pundit, and I read this earlier, about how historic it is that the Senate worked out the way it did in a midterm. The House did what it traditionally does when you have a president in power and his, in the White House, the House typically flips. But this is, it says here, thanks to President Trump, Republicans picked up 4 new Senate seats on Tuesday: Florida, Missouri, Indiana, North Dakota. Arizona, Montana, and Nevada are still being decided. By the end of the night, President Trump will gain at least 1 Senate seat, as well as many as 5 new GOP senators. This is historic, and President Trump was eager to tell the nation about his success. He's having a press conference, Dan, at 10:30 this morning. It's 10:30 Central, 11:30 your time where you are. And he is saying that he's going to be about how successful last night was, which is going to drive the media absolutely crazy. Because they're out there saying this was a huge win for Democrats. But let me ask you this: do you consider what happened in the House with the Democrats taking control? They needed 23 votes, they got 28. Do you consider that a blue wave?
Oh, absolutely not. How a blue wave? I would have thought a blue wave would have been massive number of seats and the Senate. That's the way that it seemed like they were hoping for. No, it didn't. This is actually a lot. They actually gained a lot less than historically would have happened. You know, typically, like I said, the president's party usually loses 2 or 3 times as much as we lost. So no, I think we did actually very well. And their blue wave, as they say, their blue wave got stopped by a big red wall.
Mm-hmm. What's the that's a great the wall is certainly an appropriate choice of words there. What do you think happens moving forward? I mean, there are some that are already saying on the right that as Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi is a gift to Republicans. What do you think?
Well, yeah, like I said before, it's that whole group of nut jobs that are still going to be voicing their opinions and doing their same old resist, and the same old vitriol that they're used to doing. So I think it's going to be great because it's going to further, attract Republican voters to the polls when it comes time to vote in 2020. So I think it's going to be great. I say let them continue their childish, crazy behavior for another 2 years. President Trump's a smart man. He's going to use strategy, and he's going to get the things done that he wants. At least I think he's going to try like hell, and let them continue their behavior because it's only going to help us.
I wonder, I'm trying to figure out what this is going to do to the economy, because a lot of people are wondering, okay, so this means no new major tax changes. I mean, we do know that. Like, there's not going to be any new tax structure. They're not going to lower, the House is not going to lower taxes, and the Senate's not going to raise taxes. And so, the tax rate is what it is for now. But what does this mean for, the trade wars and things like that? Can the Democrats try to stymie that in some way? I mean, these are all questions I have, and I don't think we don't have the answers to yet. Right,
because we're not in that. I'm not sure. I wonder if they resist too much. I wonder if President Trump is going to pull out his phone and his pen like Obama did. And he may have to, on things here and there, and I guess that would be okay. But as far as the economy, I would think that people would look forward a couple years and expect a second term for President Trump, knowing that when he did retake office, that the economy would grow. So I don't know that it's gonna hurt the economy. I think it's probably gonna I think a lot of stuff is really just gonna stay the same. We're gonna have the same fighting that we've had. We're just gonna have a little bit more resistance. I think now Republicans are gonna have to be on their game a little bit more. And like I said, President Trump might have to pull out some tricks.
Yeah. I do have some news here. Breitbart News is reporting that the Democrat Jackie Rosen has defeated incumbent Senator Dean Heller in Nevada, which is a pickup in the Senate for the Democrats. So that's not good news. I just see that scrolling across the screen there. Anyway, it is a mixed bag. It's certainly not what the Democrats hoped for, but it's also certainly not what we hope for either, Dan.
That's true. Yeah, we would have loved to hold on to the House. That would have been great. 2 more years, because here's the thing: Democrats are actually very successful as being the minority of being obstructive. So they were very successful the past 2 years of obstructing, even though we were able to get a lot of things through. So now, with a little bit more leverage, I think they're going to be that much more effective, which means that, like I said, Republicans are going to have to be on their game. Donald Trump's going to have to, be really swift and smart. And, it's not the ideal situation, but I still think we're okay, and I think it's going to help us in 2020.
Here's a question, and I honestly don't know this. I'm hearing people say this. We're talking with Dan Wass. He's the author of Good Gun, Bad Guy. You should, Good Gun, Bad Guy. You should check out the book. Do you think if the House, really just the Congress in general, if they had have gone along with President Trump's agenda with a much more robust, if they'd have moved faster on some things, do you think that we would have had these losses in the House? I mean, I could see an argument for either way. You know what I mean?
I think the losses in the House are purely because of the effectiveness of left-wing media and the willful ignorance of Democrat voters for going right along with all the the fake news stuff. That's really what did it. Because if the media were to tout the successes of President Trump, it wouldn't make any sense to any logical thinking person to vote against him, to vote against the Republicans. So I think the media had just about everything to do with this. They should be proud, the deviant little sinister, crew that they are, because they were effective.
I thought you were going to say something else. So thank you.
Trying to be careful.
Thank you for not. But yeah, Dan, that's a good point that you raise. That's probably the biggest winner in this whole thing that we haven't even talked about at all. The mainstream media won last night because they, regardless of whether it wasn't as big of a success, it wasn't a blue wave, but it's the media and their phony reporting that convinced enough Americans to give the House back to the Democrats. And
it really works. And we talk about that in the gun conversation all the time. That the terminology and the landscape and the narrative, it all really works to effectively, transform the thought process of people, change what people really think, and give them a different perspective that might not necessarily be true. So it works. It works in all areas of politics. I talk specifically about how it relates to the gun conversation, but in this case, and that's why they were so persistent, because they knew that, as ridiculous as it sounds to logical thinking people, and as false a narrative as it was that they're creating, they knew that there are people who would eat it like candy, and I think this is a result of what you get for that.
Yeah, and they basically convince people, hey, vote against the Republicans because you're voting for sanity. But I don't think they realized that they just really voted for Nancy Pelosi. So, that's a good analysis, Dan. I'm glad you brought up the media aspect. I actually think that probably is the best takeaway from this whole thing. Is the media is the big winner here? They still show that they're and doesn't that put into perspective why President Trump is so aggressive with them, calling them the fake news? Because he knows it as well. He knows how powerful that they are as well, and that's so he's basically right over the target.
Exactly.
So
and if you remember on your show a while back, I said what he did with the media is he basically took them and kicked them out of the popular table, sent them to the mop closet, and because by calling them fake news, he knew exactly what they were doing, and he knows the effect because he's been playing this game since the 80s. Mm-hmm. He understands it. He was a New York City businessman. He understands how the media works. So he needed to come in and hit them hard and at least uncover the veil.
Yeah, and he's done that with a lot of people. There are a lot of people that do see the light. I mean, some people would say, well, if he hadn't criticized the media, it wouldn't have been as bad as it was. No. If he hadn't have been doing what he's doing, if he hadn't have gone to these states, if he hadn't had these rallies, if he hadn't called them fake news, then the media would still be in the shadows, acting like they're objective when they're not, and they would be. So he has actually opened a lot more people's eyes than people realize. This is just kind of a snapshot this morning of where we are as a country. We're divided, but we still have the Supreme Court, the presidency, and the Senate, and so that's the silver lining, I guess. Dan Wass, I always appreciate having you on, and look forward to doing it again sometime. And stand up for conservatism in New York. I know you're kind of surrounded up there. So
It's okay. I like the fight. And thanks so much for having me, Paul.
All righty,
Appreciate
Dan.
it.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Folks, we're going to take a break, going to reset here, and be back in just a moment. Feel free to sound off on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Conduit News.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Better off with the growth rate in the economy, over 3%, compared to 8 years of Obama, under 2%. Wages are growing at their fastest rate. And if we want to keep that national security focus, keep that economic growth focus, have conservative judges on the Supreme Court, reduce the size and complexity of the federal government's power and administrative state, we need to hold the House and Senate. And so this is not an academic exercise. We need voters, particularly here in Arkansas, but across the country, to hold the House of Representatives by Republicans, and that will allow us to let President Trump and the House and Senate Republicans keep moving forward like we have the last 2 years.
Congressman French Hill, I wish you the best of luck in this final stretch before November the 6th. I know early voting is still going on. Get people out to vote. People, you got to go vote. And Congressman Hill, thanks so much for coming on the program this morning and using this platform. All righty.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
This is from Talk Business and Politics. We reported earlier, folks, that Scott Baltz had won his race. And Scott Baltz is a Democrat. This is, I got a text here. Talk Business calling Marsha Davis the winner over Baltz, reporting in air and polling places. Listen to this. This is fascinating for the local stuff. One race that had many confused throughout the night was State House District 61. The Arkansas Secretary of State reported that incumbent Democratic candidate Scott Baltz was the winner by 54% to 46% against challenger Marsh Davis. But the figures were wrong. Baltz told Talk Business and Politics the vote counts in Sharp County were transposed by the office on its website, he said. Baltz actually lost the contest by about 70 votes, he added. So Scott Baltz, the Democrat incumbent, lost by 70 votes, according to Talk Business and Politics. So I want to make that correction. That'd be another Democrat that lost, along with the Democrat Party Chairman, State Representative Michael John Gray. He loses, as well as Democrat incumbent Chris Ritchie. He loses to Republicans. So those are huge pickups right there. Now, at the same time, you have Charlie Collins, who loses, a Republican who loses in a kind of a Democrat area anyway. I was talking about that earlier, how he probably got hammered by the left. But I do have a text message here specifically about Charlie Collins, and I remember this. Somebody is asking if they remember that Charlie Collins was the beginning of Republicans joining with Democrats to elect Speaker of the House Davy Carter. And they're basically saying, need to remember this, that State Representative Charlie Collins at the time bared responsibility in some way for kind of derailing the conservative movement and the mandate that Republicans had. I mean, Arkansas would look very different today had Charlie Collins and a minority of Republicans with all of the Democrats backed Republican, quote, Davy Carter. Because you see, then State Representative Terry Rice was in the position to be Speaker of the House. You know, conservative Terry Rice, who's now senator. Arkansas would have looked demonstrably different if that choice hadn't been made, if there weren't a minority of these more liberal Republicans. So in that case, it's kind of ironic that if Charlie Collins lost, he did lose, but if the reason he lost was because of a solid right issue on the right, and that is Second Amendment, even if it was miscommunicated as to what the bill actually was and wasn't. Fascinating stuff. I mean, telling you right now, but it looks good for it certainly looks good for Republicans in the state of Arkansas in terms of them winning. Did you see? Did Mark West not get 3%, Joe? What did he get? What did Mark West get? 2.7%. My gosh, that is just so unfair. So unfair that Mark West didn't get the 3%. So unfair. It's up to 2.9%. Is everything done? Everything counted? 99% reporting, 2.9%. He needs 3%. If he needs 0.1% more, and then he's on, then libertarians have statewide ballot access without having to petition and waste all of their money and time every single year to get ballot access. So looks like the libertarians are going to come up short with that one. I will tell you this. Libertarians played some spoilers in these national house races. I'm just going to say it. I mean, maybe some of you out there don't want to hear this, but if libertarians hadn't run in some of these house races, I don't know if the Democrats would be in charge of the House right now. These races out in Virginia, I don't know if the Democrats would be in charge of the House right now if the libertarians hadn't sucked so many votes away from the Republican. I'm just saying. Folks, the telephone number 870-275-9799. I want to thank all of our audience out there for listening today. It's going to be okay. It's a very much a mixed bag, and, I think we've done a good job analyzing what happened. Arkansas gets casinos. I mean, I don't know. I hope the one over here in my neck of the woods, I hope they name it after Elizabeth Warren. I mean, because we're going to, I think it would be appropriate. You know, the Osage tribe was in the northeast part of Arkansas, the Osage. And so I think maybe we should ask Elizabeth Warren if she wants to, do a DNA test, not on Cherokee heritage, but on Osage. And then we name it the Elizabeth Warren Heritage Casino, or gaming, whatever. Just kidding. It's still gonna be called Southland because it's called Southland right now, and it's gonna continue to be called Southland. But who knows? Maybe Pope and Jefferson County. I don't know. Folks, we'll see you tomorrow.